My most memorable fish on the fly, I like that. I must say, it was my first bass I ever caught on the fly. It took me at least 6 to 7 months asking questions and where to go and how to fish for them. And like that, I was saying, I was hunting Daryl Jackson every day, texting him. So, and how do you fish with, and what tides you normally do and what size flies? And I was tying different flies, and he's like, oh, that should work and this should work. And I kept tying my flies, and I was determined to catch it on my own fly. I didn't want to go and buy a fly and catch it on. No, if I was to catch a fish, it had to be on my fly. And when I caught my first bass, it wasn't a big, it was a schoolie, but it was just, I'll never forget that fish, because that's what actually got me hooked really into the bass fishing and the saltwater fishing.
Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. This week's guest is a fly tyer well known to many of you from fairs and conventions, and it was only when he moved to Ireland over 20 years ago that he discovered fly fishing and quickly embraced the sport, especially fly tying. Having originally been from the Caribbean, it's no surprise that saltwater fly fishing remains his first love. But John Maduro also has more than a few interesting tales to tell, including the time he was a bodyguard to Mike Tyson and Mickey Joe Hart. Stories that you wouldn't normally expect from a fly tyer, I suspect. But first, Tom, it was great to get our first masterclass webinar under our belts last Thursday with Mike Keady.
Yeah, good man there. Yeah, it was really good. I was nervous about it, and just when I went out and saw how it went, I was delighted with it, because the feedback we've been getting there has been really good. It's been lovely, really good.
And that's the key. It's people are paying for this. They want information. You want it to work, and it went all smoothly. Mike was great in terms of his notes, his presenting style, and the Q&A then, which was great. There was loads of questions coming through. So you really got the sense that people were engaged, really interested in the topic. And like you said afterwards, the feedback we got from them was that they really enjoyed it. And, people are hungry for information. And actually you hear that with John Maduro's interview, actually.
Isn't it gas, actually? I was just going to say that. Yeah. No, they really are. They want the information, and as John says, he was asking the question for 6 or 7 months when he was leading into something, and and that was the important part, I thought, of the webinar as well. The questions, the Q&A sessions, that was good. There's some great questions in it as well, and that's part of it. And it gives people an opportunity to ask the things, and sometimes what might seem really to you really simple, maybe shouldn't ask it or not, ask it. There's only one way you're going to find out. Was it? I mean, I think I've said it before. There's no stupid questions. There are no stupid questions.
No, exactly. Like, you have to hold your hand up and say, what about this? And there was some great, like, we spent half the webinar on the questions and answers, and I'd say we could have done it for another hour, nearly.
Yeah, could have kept going and going and going. Yeah.
So, and look, for people, obviously everybody that attended, to get a copy, or access to the recording of the webinar and a copy of Mike's notes. And if anybody is still interested in looking back on the webinar and getting a copy of Mike's notes, you just go to irelandonthefly.com/masterclass, and the details are still there. You can still access the webinar recording if you are interested. But we will be running another one at the end of April on mayfly tactics as well, so do keep an eye out for that one. We'll be advertising that one soon, and I think, Tom, that's one again that really gets people going. It's mayfly, the madness kicks in.
I think for the trout angler, it's festival time. It's the pinnacle. It's the pinnacle of the year, really. So it should get a lot of interest in this. So look forward to that one as well.
Yeah, and there will be salmon as well. Don't worry for the salmon anglers out
there.
Well,
like what we're trying to do there is, get them in time with, the proper time when things are coming in. Like you saw there with the one we did with the early season buzzer. I mean, that's just coming into play now. I mean, buzzer's just kicked off on carb in the last couple of days. I know from my own experience, been out the last couple of days and boating, so just picking off. And so that wrapped in nicely. And then, when we have one on mayfly, hopefully probably around the end of April, we'll have date yet to be confirmed, but the end of April, that's leading into the very month of May. And then following that, and it's funny, because after May time, I think a lot of people's attention will turn to salmon then. So so we'll try and fit it in nicely.
Yeah, and look, any thoughts, ideas, suggestions from people, do let us know. Get in touch, info at irelandonthefly.com. Well, look, let's get back to this week's guest, John Maduro. And John, who discovered his love of fly fishing when he first came to Ireland, but he's originally from a small island in the Caribbean called Aruba. And John told us about his background growing up there.
Yeah, Aruba is a Dutch island in the Caribbean, and I moved to Holland when I was 16, and I was there for a good few years. Did my college degrees there and everything, did the army and everything. And I came to Ireland when my son was born. My son, he's 23 now. He'll be 23 this year. So I came over because his mom was Irish, of course, and I then came over here, and then he was born, and I never left. So, and I just fell in love with the place as well. Even though people always ask me like, "You're from the Caribbean, like it's beautiful there." Yeah, it is beautiful in the Caribbean in Aruba, and I miss it very much. But every time I even go home to the Caribbean after a week or so, I start missing Ireland. So it's like for me, this is home, and I'm here 23 years already, and for me, this is home now. And you do miss it, and I don't know, like people say, well, it rains all the time here and it's so depressing, but at the same time, no, I love the place. So, and yeah, and the fishing and everything, and you'd be counting the days over the winter when is the fishing season starting again, and like that. Yeah, no, but it's a beautiful place. Yeah.
It is true. It can get under your skin, I suppose. It always fascinates me. Kind of, you meet people. Not everybody now who comes to Ireland falls in love with it, but when you do meet people that it just gets under their skin, and like you said, you just when you're away from it, it kind of you're missing it and you want to come back. So the really interesting thing that about this is, so had you done much fishing at all, like say in Holland, or had you done any kind of fishing over there?
Growing up in Aruba, yes, my father and my uncles and all, they all fishermen there. And but back then we did no fly fishing. It's only when I learned the fly fishing here and I go home now, I bring my fly rods with me, and like we have the bonefish, the tarpons, the barracuda, all that. And like growing up, I knew about the tarpons and barracuda and all that because but back then we did all hand lining. I grew up hand lining. So you're holding a 20-pound fish on just mono there in your hand and just wrap it around your elbows and things and make sure you hold tight, and like that's how we fought the fish growing up. But then when I learned the fly fishing, I went home and my dad even was like, "You're not gonna catch a fish with that," because he never seen it. Like, and then I brought him with me and showed him, and like he was amazed, like, how did that work and everything? Because for them you need bait and and but like that. And since then, since I started fly fishing, and every time I go home on holidays, I bring the rod with me and try new patterns, and even try patterns that I use in Ireland. And like for especially the prawns, like I tie a lot of prawns and shrimp patterns here for the sea trout and sea bass. And when I go home, I bring those patterns with me to test them, and some of them actually work very good. So like that now, and so you kind of test more patterns, and I send to friends of mine like that lives in the Bahamas or in Cuba as well, and I send them these patterns, and like they're brilliant. And even one of my shrimp patterns recently, one of the guys, he was at one of the shows here in Clonanaf, and he has a tour in Argentina, so he was in Argentina with, and I gave him some of my shrimp patterns try out, and he sent me a video then the size of the sea trout he caught on that shrimp pattern there. So I was like, whoa, my flight made it all the way to Argentina. Made it there. So
Brilliant.
yeah, but it's good. It's a good feeling when your patterns work as well, and but there's a lot of testing that goes into them. I wouldn't give somebody a fly or sell any of my flies unless I have tested it and caught fish on it and know that they work.
Just want to stick with Aruba just for a minute.
Yeah.
First off, is your dad a convert now to fly fishing, or does
No,
the
it's
hand lining still
they
bear?
are still to the hand lining. Yeah, yeah.
How does the hand lining work? And was the fishing then? Was it for food and for selling? Like it was, a way of life, was it?
Well, yeah, like like it's nice. Like we grew up then, like they didn't sell fish. Now my dad, he's a tugboat engineer, and they didn't sell fish, but like that on a Sunday, that would have been our day when he was off. He knew I used to love fishing, so he used to take me out fishing with him, and so we go in the evenings like that, and we might catch a few sardines, and then you hook them up then again to a balloon. You tie a balloon, you blow up a balloon and tie it to the line, to the main line, and put on the sardines and let it loose. And the current itself will take out the balloon far out, and just sit back and relax for a few minutes, and before you know, you'll have a barracuda hit it or an amberjack and big fish, and like, no, hold on tight. So that's how we grew up. But like there's a there's a technique to it as well, like that, like if you have the main line, and it's like a circle that you hold it in, so the line is wrapped around it. But then on your leader, then that's you make like a V where you have then the weight, and then further down the line, then you have the hook then with the bait. But then there's a way of swinging it. You have to swing it until you catch a good speed, and then you kind of release it, and then you hold the circle. It's made of wood actually, and you hold it in front of you and leave it fly out like a reel. So there's a technique to it, and like that.
It's incredible. How then do you, like, I think of fly rods and, fellas are fishing in the salt with like 9, 10, 12 weights, in the salt. How does it work with the hand lining in terms of bringing in the fish? Like,
That's it. You'll have to hold on tight to the line. But the thing is as well, you get a big fish, it's gonna cut through your hands.
Yeah.
So what you normally do is once you hit the big fish, you wrap it around, you put it around your shoulders, kind of, the line, and then so your t-shirt, that's why we always kind of wear a shirt maybe, so it doesn't burn you, so it doesn't cut through. But once you start feeling the fish run, you put the line between your t-shirts and kind of leave it run. But that's why you put it between your t-shirt, otherwise your hands will be destroyed from it. So you learn with time that how to fight a fish, because like that, I've seen people like an uncle of mine even, he lost a finger doing that. So the line wrapped around his finger, and then it just pulled, and like these fish are big fish, so it just cut through your hands, and like that. If we are on the boat, they always make sure, my dad special would be given out, make sure you don't leave the reel on the floor, because a big fish hit that wraps around your foot, it can even drag you into the sea. So like, yeah, there's a lot, it looks simple, but there's a lot of danger with this, that you always have to pay attention with it and things like that. But it's fun because it's all feelings. You have to have feeling when the fish are fighting. And
Mind you, John, after hearing all that, I have to say, I think there's a lot to be said for the fly rod.
yes.
The and Aruba, is there commercial, is there fly fishing lodges there? Is there
There is a guy I know there. Yeah, there is one guy I know. He's Dutch. Since Aruba is a Dutch island, so a lot of Dutch people go there. And there's a Dutch guy there, and he has fly fishing in Aruba, and he's the only one I know that does it commercially. And they take you out to the north side of the island, where it's not as rough, but there's more mangroves there on that side. So that's where I've seen them fishing. He goes a good bit of that side by a place called Barcadera, and they fish a lot around there. And that's where you get all the big tarpons as well, and the snook and all that. But where my mother lives is in Palm Beach, and we live a few minutes away from the beach. So I just walk over, and it's all the flats. So you go early in the morning, and it's all the flats there. So it's full of bonefish then, and permits around there then. So you don't need to even go on the boat somewhere. It's just fishing the right tides, like early mornings or in the evenings, and just follow where the fish are feeding, because you see them jumping. Many times when the amberjacks are hitting or the barracudas are hitting, you can see the fish jumping. So you walk the beach up and down, and it's more of sight fishing then. And the same with the bonefish, you can see them tailing, and that's what you'll be casting. Yeah.
You lived in Aruba, you said, till you were 16. Then you moved to Holland, to the Netherlands. How long did you live there? Did you go to college there, is it, or what?
Yeah, I studied there. I did aircraft engineering. I started it, but then I joined the army then, and rest was history then, because after the army came to Ireland, then I came after that war. Remember the war in Kosovo? Yeah, so after that one, I came to Ireland then.
Did you do service over there?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Wow.
I was very young back then.
Was it peacekeeping, or was it like
Yes. Yeah, well, they call it peacekeeping, but we won't go into details here.
Yeah, because that was NATO, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was the Dutch army and
Yeah.
the Landmacht. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we were up there, but we were stuck between the Serbs and the Albanians, between the two of them. So
And it's still kicking off, I believe, over there.
it is, yeah. But like that, I was only 18 then, and like it's
It was a tough experience, I take it then, John, was it?
like it's an experience,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, do you know what? No surprise then when you come to Ireland and discover the peace and tranquility of fly fishing. You kind of go, yeah, I'll take that.
Especially with my job, like it's nice to finish work in the evenings then, and then switch off. I go tie flies in the evening, so I go fishing, and it really helps you relax and everything like that. And fly fishing actually calmed me so much. And like I used to do kickboxing here in Ireland, and back in my days when I moved to Ireland first, so I just continued training and all that and doing all that. But for me, fly fishing then kind of really brought the peace, because I thought doing the kickboxing, it'll help you handle, your anger, not anger, but it keep you cool, But it's when I started fly fishing is when I really found my inner peace, and really found that when I'm at the river or on the coast, I go home, I sleep that night.
It just goes to show. I mean, we're always saying that everybody gets something different from what we do from fly fishing, and it's when you get something out of it. And just to hear you say that, John, it just really strikes home what what fly fishing means to people in different ways. I think it's great to hear that. I think it's great to hear you say that. Yeah.
John, I will get to the fly fishing, I promise. You mentioned the kickboxing and the army and that, and it's funny because I always, like I said, fly fishing is just it's usually the other part of our lives that is, the stories to tell as well.
Yeah.
Um, so do you mind me asking? You were involved. You did some bodyguard work, and you worked with some interesting people, I believe.
Yeah, well, when I was here in Ireland, I have my qualifications for with the IBA, the International Bodyguards Association. So when I was here, like they have the details and the contact you. For example, when I was in Ireland as well, I had contacts here, and when I just came over here, like looking for work, and since I was with the army, for me it was easier to kind of find work at the doors, for example, and things like that, doing some door
Mm.
work. But back then it was easy because there was no licenses and things like that. But now the guys, they all need the license to work on the door and all that, and it got messy like that. So back then it was easy. So like that, you had to meet people, and then there was a guy. He did a lot of. He was bringing a lot of celebrities and things like that over to Ireland and things. So he contacted me, and like that, I remember Mike Tyson came over as well to Ireland. So I worked with Tyson, and yeah, when he was over, and then the same with Jonah Lumo before he died. I got to meet him as well. I worked with
Oh
him.
wow.
Yeah, so and then the small few jobs here and there, like with Mickey Joe Harris and things like that.
Long way from Mike Tyson to Mickey Joe.
Yeah, but yeah, no, some interesting people in doing that job, and
I don't know how much you can tell us, but like, was Mike just over visiting Ireland? Was it just on a?
he was actually doing it called that time was a night with Mike. They were
Oh
doing
yeah,
he was in Ireland, and he was given in Limerick actually was, and he was giving speech,
yeah.
Yeah.
and had all these questions. But he needed bodyguards back then as well, because like he had just the operation in his neck, and tried to keep people away from him with it as well. But like that, it was nice to meet him in person, and not everybody get to meet Mike, and especially if me, I grew up there, and I was always big into like the kickboxing and all that. So meeting somebody that is the same like that is it's a big thing. And like my son now, he does a lot of boxing, and like that, he's like, geez, you got to meet Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big
Yeah.
thing. Like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like we all grew up, the 1980s, 90s. Mike Tyson was and I think back to, I don't know, Tom, were you the same? Like you think back to the day, I grew up with that, the heavyweight fights, they'd be on at maybe 4 o'clock in the
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
dad, my
Love
dad
that.
knocking on the bedroom door, come on, get up, it's time to, and we'd go down. Like, it's hard to think back of that, that somebody was such a draw that you'd get up at
Mm.
4 o'clock in the morning, go downstairs, and you'd be watching this fight with blurry eyes. Like, it was just, he was a superstar, like.
Yeah, he still is. Like I know he's older now and things and all, but like he's still.
He's not that old. I'm the same age as him, John.
No, I mean in the,
For the boxing terms.
Yeah, I'm looking at him training because he's training at the moment to
Yeah.
do a
yes,
fight, and I'm just looking at him. I'm going, oh my god. Yeah,
it should be a good one. Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
Although, in fairness, yeah, fascinating. Like in terms of his life outside the ring, and obviously he spent time in prison, and
Mm.
obviously he's been in the movies, and he's seems like a very, I don't know, tortured character in the sense of the life he had. Can you ever be normal being thrust into such superstardom at such a young age? But was he quite quiet? Like when
Yeah,
he,
like he was very nice to talk to and everything, and like like he was nice and all, but like that as well. When he said, "Okay, I need peace," that's when everybody had to move away then and just leave him alone.
yeah,
So
Right.
so he can be nice now and just
yeah, which
change like that very very fast and like so. But still, he was very calm then. Then again, the Americans, you don't know if they're probably on Xanax and all that when they're over. So he probably was too calm.
well, maybe he needed fly fishing, John. He
Yeah.
should have.
Exactly.
I,
Yes.
I could
Yes.
just imagine Mike Tyson on the river,
Mm.
casting.
And all I was thinking actually, because I remember they were selling a Dromoland Castle there, and there's a
Mm.
brilliant river there, and all that for the fishing, and you can see the people going fishing. I was like, well, I wish I was on that boat, no fishing out there.
Excellent. That's
All
I
I was
love to hear
thinking.
that, John. That's great. That is
Yes.
fantastic. Yeah. You met Jonah Lomu too.
With him, we didn't interact too much because his wife was over as well, and she was kind of running everything. And they were trying to get, he had the book, and he was doing as well, like speeches and things, trying to get money. Then, like before he died and all that, because he was sick at the time. So, like his wife was dealing. So we dealt more with the wife than with him. He was just going up giving the speeches. So I say I got to talk to him a few minutes and things, and but like that. He wasn't well as well, so he couldn't really interact as much as we did with Tyson. Like, yeah,
Did I tell you my foreman story?
no, go on.
No, go on.
Promise the listeners we will get onto fly fishing. This reminds me of the
This
when we were talking
Michael
rugby,
Cosgrove.
Mike Cosgrove and rugby. Half the people have turned off by now, but anyway, they'll be back next week. So when I used to work on Off the Ball, George Foreman was over. It's 20 years ago or whatever, and he was promoting his George Foreman grill. We asked him anyway. The question was we were asking about the Rumble in the Jungle, and we said what was the toughest moment, or what was the toughest moment in your career? And he was talking about the Rumble in the Jungle, and he said, "Do you remember what Ali had the rope a dope strategy?" And so Ali would just go up against the ropes, and he would just wait for Foreman to pound him.
Yes.
And he was tiring Foreman out. That was his tactics. And Foreman says he's pounding Ali. Ali's taking all the hits, and he says, and he's coming in close, and he's pounding him. And Ali, all he could hear, he said, was Ali coming up to Foreman at the side of his head in his ear, going, "Is that all you got, George? Is that all you got?" And Foreman said, "That nearly killed me." Thinking he was
Wow.
just doing so much, and Ali's just going, "Is that all you got, George? Is that all you got?" And
Yeah.
Foreman goes, "Man, that was tough."
That'll break anyone, like
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Anyway, sorry, fly fishing.
Are we talking about fly fishing? Are we?
We are, yeah.
Better get
Oh
on.
yeah, sure. We will. Yeah, come on. Might as well.
We leave Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury for another day. So you came to Ireland, and was it basically you're on the coast, said, I got to try this fish and lark?
No, when I came to Ireland, I lived in Limerick for a while before I moved to Cork, and that's where I met this fella. Well, a friend of mine, his dad was big into the fly fishing, and he introduced me to it. He actually passed away last year. Eddie Doherty, his brother owned the fly fishing shop in Limerick there, John Doherty. But it was Eddie that got me into the fly fishing, and he showed me how to cast and everything. Was bringing me on the field and showed me how to cast. And like, I really fell in love with the way of fishing when he was taking me, and I wanted to learn. So I only was fishing with him 2 weeks when I went and bought my first fly rod myself then. And I even bought the wrong stuff because, like, sure, I didn't have a clue what to buy. I just went to the shop and said,
Yeah.
I need a fly rod, and spent a fortune because they sold me an expensive fly rod on top of it. But like that, I went back to him. He's like, well, that's not the right line. I'll go back with you. And we changed the line to that specific fly rod and also. ended up getting my fly rod. So I was going down to the Plassey in Limerick, the Plassey River, fishing then for trout and things like that. So I started learning how to do it, but was my first time fly fishing, so I had to still learn quite a bit. And like that, start watching YouTube and see what people are doing and asking questions to the fishermen out there. And before I knew, I started learning, reading the water, and started catching fish. But it's
Bibio, I believe. Is the Bibio, to the Bibio figure?
that's it, yeah.
Yes.
I started with wet flies really, so it was BBO and then a few spiders, and I never knew about nymphing or anything like that, but started with the wet flies, and then I started to see all these flies. I was fascinated with them. When going to the shop, I was like, how do people tie these and how do they make them? And I wanted to learn, and that's when I bought the book, The Fly Tying Bible.
Ah, yes.
I started watching then David McFeel, for example,
Yeah.
and like there wasn't many people doing many YouTube videos yet. You can find a few, but like Dave, you can from then you can still see his videos from a long time ago. I started trying to tie like him and trying to learn, but of course, now that I'm a fly tyer, I noticed then that okay, so that's why it was difficult back then because of course different threads, for example, different materials, and when you don't understand your materials, it's harder to tie than when you understand the material. So, but with trial and error, I learned and slowly I kept at it. And it's only when I moved to Cork that you see the coast again, and I was like, I need to get back into the saltwater because for me, saltwater was always the thing. Like I grew up in the Caribbean, and for me, the saltwater, that's what I wanted to do. And like that, I started following different people on Facebook, and I don't think Instagram was even out yet, but on Facebook, like for example, Darren Jackson, and like I've had many conversations with him over the years when I started, and he was showing me different patterns that he was tying, and he was giving me advice, and like that, I started tying my flies, and you know, they they didn't look nothing like they look now, but like that, you keep trying different materials and get your own style of tying as well. So it's only when I caught my first bass that I started to realize, okay, so these flies didn't work, but this fly works, so I'm gonna start tying most of my flies this way. And like that, I started developing around that kind of patterns. And that's how I started adding more flat wings into my patterns. And before I knew, most of my flies now they're all flat wing patterns because I tie a lot with flat wings because they're flies that worked for me. And then started experimenting a bit with shrimps as well. But of course, with the bass fishing, yeah, the fly does play a part. But bass fishing, you learn with the years of fishing then that it's more about being at the right time, at the right place. So certain venues, like they have fish, but you can only fish them really on the incoming tide. Other venues work best on the outgoing tide. And like that, it's bass fishing is more about putting in the time and experimenting and exploring different tides and fish different tides at a certain venue and see how they're feeding and then you know, okay, so like I used to write a lot when I lived in Cork. Like I have all my marks in Cork, and that's why I miss it a lot because like I knew exactly, okay, so today's incoming tide. Okay, so we have easterly, well, southern winds now, or the wind is blowing hard in this side, so we'll go to Youghal, for example, or we go to West Cork, for example. You see different depending on the wind and the tides. And like that, I knew exactly where to go on the incoming tide or where to go on the outgoing tide and get fish. But it took me years to
Build it
learn
up.
this and write
Mm.
things down. I'll always be writing things down. But
Yeah.
when I moved to Waterford, or like last year, to be honest, I was so frustrated because like in one way it's still a good experience because like you still enjoy going out fishing and trying to figure it out, but because it was a new venue for me, it was kind of a challenge because like you don't know the place and you don't really have friends in Waterford to kind of show you. And then I met with James Barry and he showed me a few places and he has so much knowledge and only that he showed me these places, kind of like at the end of the season, I started catching fish again and finding fish in our own water for it. And it was cool then, like, but like that, no, this season, I'm ready for it because I know now where to fish and what tides to fish them and like that. So
People don't realize it's the amount of blank days that have to go into it in terms of, especially
that's it.
on the salt, like,
That's it. Yeah.
and Instagram and social media can be a bit misleading in that way. You
Yeah.
see pictures, you don't see all the other pictures of just water.
Yeah, I
That's the
suppose
thing.
all.
Yeah. People
Yeah,
think it's always like catching and catching.
And would you ever go spinning, John, on the coast, or would you always just do fly rod? Because obviously conditions can be very tough for.
When I go to new venues, I do, if it's a new place, I would use the spinning rods to go past, like to find the fish faster. I would use the spinning rod for a week or two on a
mm,
certain place. And once I know, okay, so this is how they are there, I come back with a fly rod and I stick to the fly rod. And even if it's high winds, I do backcasts. Once I go on that fly rod, I'm not changing for the fly rod there. I use the spinning rod to find the fish. And that's it, yeah.
and then as a matter of interest, then John, when you moved to Waterford in the last year or so, did you do the same thing? Did you take notes and write down of every place you went to? Were you
I
as
have to take a
methodical?
note. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
have taken some notes.
I think that's a fantastic thing to do, and I think for any angler, and it's not just in saltwater, but in any form of fishing, fly fishing or fishing,
That's
I
it.
think doing that because I'm sure, because I keep notes sometimes, and sometimes you look back at notes and you'll actually forget things. And the notes actually do help you. You'll go, oh God, it's like what you said there. God, no, that day the wind was actually from the east. It's like
Yeah,
what you said
that's it.
there. Oh, and that's how I was able to fish that light. So
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, fair play to you. That's a really good way of going around things.
And especially with the notes, I find like the salt water, it's it's okay, but like this, I found it more when I was taking notes. It's more like I do a lot of saltwater fishing, but I love from June on fishing at night for sea trout. I
Mm,
just love it.
yeah.
So I would hit the rivers in the night. Like last year, I drove many Fridays on because I off on Saturday. So I would drive Fridays to Cork because I know my spots in Cork for the river fishing at nighttime. And I was driving that 2 hours. I didn't care because I knew I was going fishing. And that's another passion of mine is it's sea trout fishing in the dark on the rivers, and I just love it. It's like when you're there at night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock at night, no one around, and it's just you in the water and you just waiting for that take. It's you can't beat it. And that's when the notes come in very good because like that, for example, I've been taking notes for years now in certain places in Cork that when I go back over them, I was like, yeah, you're right. Around this time last year and the year before, I was getting fish. And sometimes my friends will text me, oh no, there's no fish around. And I'll go back over my notes. It's like, yeah, I'll wait another 3 weeks. And it's like, what? So yeah, I'll go back in 3 weeks there. But like that, it's because of like, years of data that I've been taking and like that. But sea trout fishing, that's even on the coast, I love the bass fishing. Bass fishing is like when you have a good sized bass hit your fly, you know what time it is. But for me, I like the challenge. And for me, sea trout fishing, it's harder because, to get a sea trout on the coast to take a fly, it's different than having a bass take a fly. Bass will hit anything really, but sea trout are very picky many times. And on the coast, I find them very hard. And it took me years to kind of break that code. And now I go on the coast and like I can find them and I can catch them. But the way I would fish for them is I wouldn't be doing it like we do, like when I go to Denmark fishing for them. You just cast and you strip, and bang, you have a sea trout hit you. No, here, the way I fish for sea trout in Ireland is I will do the same way I would do for bonefish in the Caribbean. I will walk the beach. And, especially in the evenings, you will see the sea trouts jump. And that's when I will cast a few feet away from them and leave the fly kind of come over right where they jump, and that's where I might have one or two strips and stop, and two hard strips again, and 80% of the time you'll get that hit. So that's how I would fish for the sea trout by sight fishing for them because they always give themselves away in the evenings and of early mornings as well. You will see them jumping on the beach, especially in estuaries and things like that. You can see them jump, and that's where you just cast a few feet from them and leave the fly sink, and then a few hard pulls and stop again, and a few hard pulls, and that's it. They'll hit it.
Sounds
That's
fabulous,
how I
doesn't it?
fish for them.
Sounds absolutely
Uh,
fabulous. Yeah.
and a couple of questions on that. One is, what flies would you be using for the sea trout?
For the sea trout, I like small patterns. For example, very small streamers. You see, this is a size 10,
Yeah.
a size 10 streamer. And like that as
Mm.
well, when I develop my flies, for example, this one, it has a lateral scale in the middle. And I've tested them with the lateral scale and without the lateral scale in the middle. And I found them many times they hit the fly with the lateral scale because it's kind of a small shine. So when the fly moves, it gives a little shine. And I don't know if that's what's triggering them, but that's the only size I would fish with a sea trout. That would be my size. Probably about.
I think we'll definitely put a picture up
Yeah.
when we put it up on social media. We'll put a picture up of that pattern. We'll get a pattern off you, John. It looks fantastic. I
Yeah.
see what you mean by the lateral side of it.
And for bass, these will be my flies. And you see, they're flat wings. So
And for those of you who, because you can't see this now, but it's very funny because both Dara and I have peered right into our laptops, looking really
um,
close.
I think that's just old age, Tom.
I'll
Well,
send you some
yeah, you need
pictures. I'll send
glasses.
you some pictures, then you can have the pictures then. And so yeah, so my bass flies, for example, you saw the size. My flies, I don't fish big flies. Like I
Mm.
know guys, they fish, they look like pike flies, massive flies. Well, like each to their own, whatever they feel comfortable with. Like my personal fly box, I would have between a size 4 and a size 6 for the bass. Like, and sometimes even smaller, I will fish little bait fish patterns in a size 8 even, because like, especially in the summer when there's so many small sprats around and things, they'll be feeding on little sprats like that. And you'd be surprised. Like I was fishing for mullet last year and I had a little Scot on, a little size 12 little Scot. And all of a sudden I had a hard steak and I was like, Jesus, like, it was, and I had a 6 weight rod on me. So all of a sudden the rod was going and I was like, that's a massive mullet now. But the way it was fighting it didn't feel like the way the mullets would fight. And that's when I got closer and realized it was a bass. And like, you'd be surprised,
Wow.
like, how small little fly a bass will take. Like my biggest bass, like like was really on a tiny little fly that I was fishing at nighttime and I forgot my fly box and I had one little streamer and there was hardly any hair left on it because of fishing it for weeks before already. And there was hardly anything but say I wasn't gonna go home again. So I just said I fished that and my biggest bass was caught on that little streamer like that. And
My
it was
God.
hardly
Yeah.
I could have counted the bucktails on it.
What size bass was it?
I was good size now. But for me, on the fly rod, it was a good size, 70 centimeter. So
Oh, wow.
that's a good size bass.
That's good. That's good
Yeah,
bass.
yeah. So that's the biggest one I ever caught as well. So I'm hoping to have double figures.
With the sea trout then, and for the coastal work, that small streamer you work, you use the small flies for the sea trout as well, in around the size 10.
Yeah, so those small ones, I wouldn't go any bigger than that on
And
the
for
coast. Like
and
between
for if
eight
ever,
and
and
10.
is it just the coast you'd use them on? Like, do you ever fish in the rivers or whatever? What would you?
No, I wouldn't fish these streamers in the river, no. But saying that, I have given them to friends. These little
Mhm.
streamers, I have given them to some friends, and they fish them. They use them on brown trouts, and they've got brown trouts on them. And the
Yeah,
same with my shrimp patterns. I have the shrimp patterns that I try if I realistic shrimp. I don't have it with me now. The moment they downstairs. But like if you look on my Instagram or Facebook, you can see the shrimp patterns. I like to tie them very realistic. And a friend of mine, he fishes a lot of prawns for salmon, and he saw my prawns one day, and he was telling me like that would work if you tie me a few red ones. So I went back home, and then I took the red Francis salmon fly. So I implemented the colors of the red Francis in my shrimp pattern, and I gave him that, and He had 9 salmon on that fly, but the way he fished it was on the edge of the river where it's very calm. He wouldn't fish them in the stream, and he was telling me that they come up and take it. So at the slow water, that's where he was fishing it, which made sense because that's how I would fish my shrimp patterns on the coast. I don't fish shrimps by casting them and stripping. No, when I fish shrimp patterns, the only time I would fish the shrimp pattern is just when the tide turns. So at low water, you have that few minutes then that the tide is going to turn, start coming back in. You have that slack water. That's when I would fish shrimp patterns because the fish will be feeding between the kelps and all that, looking for shrimps and little crabs, then waiting for the tide to turn, come back in and start hitting the bait fish again and all that. So that's when I fish shrimp patterns. The only time I would fish them is on that time when the tide is turning. I wouldn't fish them on outgoing tide or anything like that. Even though outgoing tide is my favorite tide to fish in general, I would fish the last hour in the dropping tide. Most of the time, that's my most productive time for bass fishing, is on the last hours for dropping tide. That's one of my favorite times to fish. But like that, shrimps, I will only fish it on the slack water. Small tips that might help.
No, it's brilliant. Like, it's really helpful because I know it can be very daunting. I've said this before in the podcast, Tom. That fishing in the salt. How reading the water conditions, tides, so much to it. Like,
I've always said that. Like, I just wouldn't have a clue because it's completely alien to me. If I was to go and fish a piece of coastal water, John, I just really wouldn't know what to do. And that extra thing that freshwater anglers don't have to deal with, and that's the tide. And you're mentioning it there. And it's really interesting to hear you say, because freshwater anglers don't deal with the tide. Simple as that. And it's very important. It's really interesting to hear you say that because, like, from the little bit I've garnered from it so far, I would have always thought, oh, it's just as the tide is rising and it's as that's the time to catch it. It's really interesting to hear you say that it's on the outflowing tide.
Yeah.
It's good, really good, really fascinating to hear all this stuff.
But saying that, now that you mentioned on the rivers, like unless you fish in sea trout, because like that, many rivers are the tidal rivers, and you find the most sea trout come into the rivers there. Like for example, if you're in Cork, for example, on the tidal river, so I find as well the dropping tide, like when it's dropping again, you get good hits, unless it's fresh fish running, and you'll be the first ones getting them. But like you see different preferences of way of fishing, but it's how I was more lucky with outgoing tides normally in my fishing. So you learn to fish it more, and same with your flies, you be more confident. And that's very important, because if you go fishing and you're not confident, like I know people blank, but if you're not confident you're gonna catch a fish, then it's like, I don't know. You have to be confident in your fly and confident. Well, I will catch something today, even though after it you go home. Oh, I didn't catch anything today. But you have to have that confidence that something will happen.
No, that is so true, John, and that's across all types of fly fishing. And there's so many times the confident angler will catch a fish, and couldn't really put a reason as to why it's happened. But they just believed in everything that they're doing is right, and that they know it's going to happen. So when the opportunity comes, everything goes right, and they nail it.
Yeah.
But that comes with, I always say, it comes with putting in the experience. It's not to be afraid to be wrong and to make mistakes and keep learning from it. Like when we spoke to Darius, wasn't it, the Rivers champion, Tom? And like he was very clear, like same thing kind of. He was saying, John, when he moved to Ireland, that's really when he got into the fly fishing, and he just put in the hours, and that's what he said. He made so many mistakes, but just the love of being out was what drove him, and he's Irish captain and champion, and it's. But you have to get to that stage where, what is it they say, about learning, and you have to be prepared to kind of keep making the mistakes until you kind of get to the next stage where you're learning from your mistakes and you know why you're making the mistakes.
Then don't be afraid to ask questions. I still ask questions. Like I tie a lot of shows, and when I go to shows, I'll be tying, but I'll be watching the guys what they're doing and go back home and use that technique. Like I was sitting beside Paul Monaghan in the British Fly Fair, and he has so much knowledge. Like he does pike fishing, but the way he does his bucktails and things, I went back home and implemented them in my own patterns again.
Yeah.
And like you always learn things, and but that's the only way you will learn if you want to learn. Because if you think you know everything, then you're not gonna learn
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very obvious, John, like speaking to you, like your wealth of knowledge, in terms of fishing the coast, for the bass and the sea trout, you've obviously put in the hours and the knowledge you have. But you're as well known, if not more well known, for your fly tying.
Mm.
So tell us about the fly tying. You talked to us earlier about, you got fascinated by how, the flies were made and you got more into that. Do you find it now a hard balancing act between wanting to get out fishing and also wanting to tie flies?
It is a challenge because then what happened is now that you have people contacting you again, and it's like, oh, John, will you tie me a batch of flies here again? And I can't say no to people because like a lot of them they come to the shows and they come for the chat, and so people that like follow my work quite a while, when they come over to the show and they're like, John, will you tie me? And like they came all the way to see you, and like I will feel guilty saying, no, well, I'm not gonna tie you flies and things. I'm not tying for anyone, and like that. And every week I say, okay, this is the last order I'm tying, and then again another person contacts you, and like that. It's challenging because I want to go fishing. Like my own fly box is empty. Like I have a handful of flies in my fly box. And to be honest, my own fly box are the flies that the thing with me is I'm very what you call it, what's the word for it? I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I have a lot of OCD. So everything has to be perfect. I might tie a perfect fly, put the eyes on, for example, on a streamer, but if I put the head on it, the UV resin, and it doesn't look good, for me that's a no-go fly. I wouldn't sell it or I'd give it to anyone. So I have a box here at home, and there's at least
John,
500
no.
flies in that. And my friends, when they lived in Cork, they come over to me and it's like, "Where's that box?" And they go through it like, "John, there's nothing wrong with this fly." And then they'll take loads of flies with them, and like that, I have a box full of flies there because for me they don't look good, and but it's because the way like they have to look perfect. Everything has to be in place, like each thread wrap, like when I finish with the hair, everything have to sit perfect because like I it's who I am, and like that, and that's why probably I'm known as well for my flies. And I was lucky enough because with the fly tying, I started tying saltwater patterns, and there wasn't many people doing the saltwater patterns when I started. So what happened was the likes of Arex, for example, Arex hooks, they had different people on different teams and then they saw in Ireland that, oh, so this guy, like I was contacted by one of the guys that was on their team, and it's like, oh, I see you tie saltwater flies. Are you with any team and things? And I said no. And he said, would you like to join Arex because they're looking for saltwater fly tyers and in Ireland and UK? So I said, yeah, well, that'd be great. So that's how I joined Arex. And before I knew then, I was approached then by Flyco and Deer Creek and like that. Like it went from not being on any team in 1 month to being on like 3 teams in the following month. It's like it was like all along, like I was hoping to get on a team, but it wasn't getting recognized or anything. But I just kept at it. I kept posting on Instagram as well, and then somebody just approached me like that. Now I'm on a few teams now with Easy Shrimp Pies and Rates Up as well. And I joined Rates Up there a few years back there, but they're really taking over the market there as well. You can see, and like that, it's all the big brands, which is great to be part of because then when you go to the shows and like I always say, a good fly tyer always have quality material. So quality materials equals quality flies. And people can disagree with me on that, but I like when I tie with for example, if it's a quality hackle, it will sit nicer on your fly. And the same with the bucktail or the naiads. Like if it's quality, you see the difference straight away than when you use materials that is not really quality and like that. So I'm lucky enough to have all these big brands supporting me and helping me when I need materials for the show, and I'm very thankful to that. And like that, very busy with shows, then no time to myself then. But hopefully this year I'll do more fishing. Yeah,
It's just what you say there, and you touched on it earlier on when you were talking. I thought it was very, very good statement, Sean. You said if you don't understand your materials, the flight time can be more difficult, and that's not
yes,
just the quality, but also just actually understanding how to work with them. I think
yes,
that's it's a good thing for any fly tyer starting out there as well. To know a bit how to work with them rather than just plowing into them. And once you understand what's got to be done with them, it can make a huge difference, can't it?
that's it. And like people sometimes they be like a lot of times they be having the laugh with me at the shows when I'm tired at the shows because they're like, "Oh, John, can I borrow your hair straightener?" You know, because like when I'm tired, like I prepare my materials and I have my hair straightener with me, and like, and this like again, I didn't come up with this. I learned it from another fly tyer, like a great salmon fly tyer, Shane Hickey. Like he used to do the hair straightener, and he taught me all these things, how to prepare these materials for the salmon flies. And like that, it's like yeah, like that actually makes sense. And what happened is by using the hair straightener, I was able to use other materials because, for example, marble fox was never, you don't really see people using it much in saltwater patterns. So what happened is I started a whole new different baitfish patterns, and everybody's like, "Oh, what material is that?" I said, "That's fox." We say, "Yeah, but why does it look like that?" It's because I was straightening it with a hair straightener and make it look perfect. And you see, so like that, it's always you learning new things, and that's why I always give thanks to all those guys that took the time to teach me things, and I'm still learning, and there's still much more to learn. And the same, like you were mentioning there, you don't know how to fish for saltwater and things, and a lot of people get intimidated at it. But look, an advice I can give is get a guide for a day. Go with a guide. Like you have good guides out there, like Jason here, Jason Reardon. He like I even was at one of his classes many years ago when himself and Ken Whelan gave a class in Dungarvan. And like I learned a lot from that. And like that, go contact him, go on a day's fishing with him. Like, you might not catch a fish or things, but at least you will learn how to read the water because that's very important. Reading the water and seeing where the fish would be, that's very important. So you can start practicing yourself. Once you know where to fish, you can start going different tides. And okay, so I'll go there on the oncoming, I'll go on the outgoing, but at least you know where to go. There's no point going somewhere down that you might not even have fish there. You see, at least he can show you where to go like that, and that's very important. So I would advise get a guide, and like I always say, like I don't mind paying if I'm learning. Like there's no price on knowledge. Like, and that's I tell my son and everything. Like sometimes he's like, "Oh, Dad, but that costs a lot." And things. I said, "Killian, look, you're learning something. I'll pay anything as long you learn something, because you can't put a price on that." And that's the way I am anyway.
No, that's
Yeah,
very true. Very true,
yeah.
John.
Very well said, John. Are you looking forward to the 2024 season in terms of kind of like the Copper Coast? What a place to be fishing, Are you hoping to get more out of it this season?
Yeah, because my friends were sending me pictures already. They're in Cork and they were teasing me because they're out fishing already. And they've been catching fish already, but not bass. They were out at some of the marks that I fish for sea trout on the coast. They were out already, and they've been catching some sea trouts already on the coast. And they were sending pictures, "Oh, John, you're missing out and this and that." But I'm looking forward to it. But like that, there's a few shows coming up. Like we have the Adair Spring there, the Irish Spring Fair, and then you have the one at the in April as well. Cronin have the Monster Fair. So like that, like I'll be tying loads of flies, so I'll have a lot of flies to tie for these shows because I like bringing loads of flies with me to these shows because there's a lot of people always come over and like I have a bad habit of giving my flies away. So like you always have to give back to people like that give put in the time to come see you or follow you or comment on your Facebook and things, I always give back to them. And that's why I always have loads of flies with me. So I'll be tired for these shows, but after that, definitely, I'm looking forward now to hit the coast. Like as soon as the weather clears up a small bit anyway.
We've got some really bad one. John, we've got some great snippets of information out of you, and you've had some really fantastic stuff to say about both the saltwater and the fly tying, and some interesting things on the old past life and the bodyguarding as well. We've given you a forewarning of this. We ask every guest on the show. So I'm going to ask you now, what, John, was your most memorable fish on the fly?
My most memorable fish on the fly, like that, I must say, was my first bass I ever caught on the fly. And reason why was because it took me at least 6 to 7 months asking questions and where to go and how to fish for them. And like that, I was saying, I was hunting Daryl Jackson every day, texting him. So, and how do you fish for, and what tides you normally do and what size flies? And I was tying different flies and he's like, oh, that should work and this should work. And I kept tying my flies and I was determined to catch it on my own fly. I didn't want to go and buy a fly and catch it on. No, if I was to catch a fish, it had to be on my fly. And when I caught my first bass, it wasn't a big, it was a schoolie, but it was just, I'll never forget that fish because that's what actually got me hooked really into the bass fishing and the saltwater fishing with the fly rods. And that's like I've caught big fish in the Caribbean. Like I'm talking about 40-pound, 50-pound fish. But for me, that bass was the most I remember. Yeah.
And what I love about that, John, as well, is that you said you were asking the questions for 6 months.
Yes.
It's not like you said, oh, I've tried it, can't get it, give up, or what'll I do? You kept at it, you kept asking the questions. And I think that's the key for anybody that's listening to this, whether it's the fly tying, fly fishing, heck, could be life, whatever. You know what I mean? You're doing, just keep trying.
Even with the casting.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I've got I don't fish clousers, and clousers, like I tie nice flat wing clousers and people love them, but I don't fish clousers. Why? Because I got a clouser stuck in the back of my ear one time, and that was the end of it.
Fair enough.
It's with the casting, even getting into the casting with a double haul and things, and there's me double hauling with a clouser, and I couldn't even cast properly yet. And before I knew whack, I got the clouser stuck in the back of my ear, so I had to pull it through to debarb it and then to get it back out. So since then, I've been afraid of clousers. But like that, it's all practice and learning from your errors.
Exactly. But John Maduro, it's been brilliant talking to you. Finding your story thus far. You have many decades ahead of you in terms of the fish that you're going to catch and the flies that you're going to tie. Just remind people, so if they want to have a look at your Instagram and your YouTube, it's cast_by_John on Instagram.com. Is that right?
That's it, yeah, cast by John. So cast_by_John. And then my YouTube is cast by John Fly Tying.
John, thanks a million for joining us and tight lines for the season.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Our thanks to John Maduro for joining us on the show. Don't forget to rate, review, and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.